Welcome back to another episode of The Founder, a show that features entrepreneurs and their early stories of ingenuity, struggle, and perseverance to get their companies off the ground. We do our best to capture the uncensored, uncovered look behind the curtain into what founders really face when getting started. I'm your host, Kallaway. Our founder guest on today's episode grew up in West Philadelphia and always dreamed about traveling the world. After graduating high school and then USC for college, he found himself in Palo Alto, working in management consulting for the booming startup scene. One of the tech phenomenons at the time was peer-to-peer file sharing, birthing a new world of music discovery across sites like LimeWire, Kazaa, and Napster, and opening Pandora's box for those who had previously been constrained to only local radio. Our founder discovered a love for dance music and found that listening to European festival sets was a game changer for his runs. He knew that if he couldn't be at the festivals in person, he wanted a way to see what was happening firsthand, and that's what led him to start his first company, BeApp TV. Over the past 13 years, BeApp TV has been the leading distribution and content channel for music festivals, sporting the highest quality audio and video experience on the internet. When COVID hit in early 2020 and music festivals essentially went to zero, he knew that although the in-person experience was on hold, there was still a need to democratize the artist experience for fans all over the world. This was the kernel of inspiration for BeApp. Today at BeApp, this founder and his team are delivering artist access through a virtual portal on your phone. On the BeApp, a user is able to virtually attend concerts with artists like Katy Perry, Miguel, Cascade, DJ Khaled, Griffin, Steve Aoki, and Flowstradamus, as well as local artists performing new music every day. And these concerts aren't your typical grainy Zoom call. We're talking about extremely high quality audio and video experience that lets fans engage directly with an artist or jump to the virtual front row for everyone to see. And there's a lot of exciting things on the roadmap. At the end of the conversation, I chat with this founder about where BeApp is going and some incredible technology on the horizon. This was an inspiring interview that shines a spotlight on the future of artist engagement and how even COVID can have a silver lining. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Now introducing the founder of BeApp, Ray Smith. Let's get it. Ray, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today about BeApp and your experience with BeApp TV as well. Before we dive into your background and the founding story, what I'd love to start with is just an anchor point for kind of where the business and the product is today. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just give us a snapshot of, I know you got your hands in a lot of things, kind of what are the mission and vision for BeApp and BeApp today, and kind of how big are they?
Sure. I guess the primary goal of every business that I've been involved in is really trying to democratize access to events, to artists, and to different things around the world. For me, I grew up just outside of West Philadelphia, and we didn't have much. Like, we didn't have the opportunity to go to so many amazing destinations or so many concerts. And sometimes when you have these aspirational places that you can't get access to, sometimes you just dream about them. And as a kid growing up, I've dreamt about all these locations, concerts, artists, and things that I wanted to see, and really try to use the power of the web to create platforms that allow anybody to have access to these things. And one of the fascinating things about the internet is that's kind of what it was built for. It was allowing you to connect with whatever you want. And for me, connecting with world-class experiences was everything. And so the foundation of BeApp TV and then my second company, BeApp, was really built on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm pumped to get into that. And I love and agree with the democratization. Like, we're going through a revolution right now, especially in the last 5 years or so. It seems that just everything around content and access and influence is being democratized so much, and it's just giving so much creativity and inspiration to people, which is great to see. So I love that mission. Let's rewind the clock a bit. I think you have a really unique background, and I would love for you, kind of as fast or as slow as you'd like, to just walk us through the journey.
Sure. So I grew up in a town called Drexel Hill, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And while it was a great experience, I always, daydreamed and had aspirations of leaving for a myriad of reasons. And that's not to disparage where I'm from. It's just, I always dreamed about other parts of the world. I used to go to the library and I would sit and just read travel books. And you would hear about these far off destinations, places like Paris and Rome and Europe and in South America. And I just thought, wow, how great would it be to be able to travel the world? So the first opportunity I got to leave when I graduated from high school, I ended up going to USC, so University of Southern California, which is as probably far away from where I'm from as you could imagine. And it's interesting because when you leave home, sometimes things are better than expected. Sometimes things aren't as they don't fulfill the fantasy that you built up in your mind. But again, I always had this, gypsy-like mentality, even though I had never been anywhere, to see the world and to do some things. So when I graduated from USC, I went to go work in Palo Alto. So this is at the boom times of the dot-com bubble, and I was doing management strategy consulting at a firm called RB Weber. So it was a few ex-McKinsey guys who came together. We had a venture fund, and then a lot of the companies we invested in, we as the consultants just were kind of embedded inside these companies. So at a very young age, I mean, straight out of college, I was doing things I shouldn't have been. I certainly wasn't qualified to do. But you kind of gotten thrown into the deep end, and I think there's many different pathways you could take as an entrepreneur. I think a lot of people that go into management consulting, you kind of get visibility into a lot of decisions that you have to make as an executive without having to spend your own money, which I think is crucial. And one of the hardest lessons learned when you're running your own company is it's your money or it's your investors' money, and those mistakes become very costly. Whereas as a consultant, and especially when at the time at RB Weber, you're getting visibility and you're getting ready, you're prepared to make some very big decisions, or at least provide your thoughts and the analysis as to why you're making some of these decisions, but you don't have your whole life savings at stake. So at my time when I was working at RB Weber, there was this whole thing called file sharing, which just started coming around. So this is, for anybody that's over 35 will remember when Napster and Kazaa and a lot of LimeWire, when all these file sharing sites started popping up, it really opened up my eyes to a whole different world of music that I'd never heard before. So in the 90s, most of the music that I listened to, and I think the majority of people listened to, this was well before internet radio, was local. So you listened to your local FM station, and whatever was in the top 40, that's kind of what you heard. Obviously, there were bootleg tapes that circulated depending upon the genre of music that you listened to. But LimeWire, Kazaa, and Napster really opened up the world, so I could start to listen to different types of music from anywhere. You didn't necessarily need to be in London to listen to UK music. I really got into dance music. Like I just loved electronic music, and I've always been a very big runner. And so one of the things about running is there's different parts of your brain that are stimulated with different notes, and it's almost like when you watch a film score. There are certain sounds in that film score that can make you feel a certain emotion. So if they want to make you feel anxiety, they give you staccato. Or if they want to make you feel sad, there's certain things. One of the things about electronic music, which was great, is when you're running, it almost can artificially trigger that runner's high. And so for me, I was just a big fan of dance music. And so when I was working, when we should have been billing clients, I was spending all my time just downloading illegal music. I'm really trying to prepare myself for my runs. And, when I was listening to these illegal downloads, one of the things about electronic music is they're full-length performances. So when you have a DJ set, it sounds a bit cliche, but a lot of electronic music DJs will say, I want to take a listener on a musical journey. And one of the things about listening to live recordings from festivals, especially when you're running, it's incredible. I highly encourage any runners out there that if you haven't set your run to electronic music, it's almost like a moving meditation, because you're listening to just the repetitive beat, and it kind of provides you an audio escapism. So when I was downloading all this this dance music, I was just hearing this stuff from these big European festivals. And when you're listening to the audio, you hear different things. Like you'd hear smoke cannons, you'd hear sirens, you'd hear girls screaming. And I was just like, man, I'm listening to this. It's like, wow, I wonder what this looks like. You're listening to the audio, but you don't have a visual associated with it. And I just thought it was crazy that, there was technology that was coming around. Web television was just getting up and running. But in the Valley, a lot of people were talking about IPTV and how you could use the internet to really create new forms of distribution of content. And I just thought to myself, it would be crazy to be able to watch these festivals and listen to them, especially just with all the different dynamics that you hear but you can't see. And that was kind of, the seed that gave me the idea to start Be at TV. So I started dating a girl, and she was European, and I went to Europe, and I went to some of these festivals that I've been listening to online, and I just thought to myself, oh my God, how have we missed this? It's incredible, especially like, when you go to USC and you live in LA, you think you're at the epicenter of cool. And when you live in Palo Alto, you think you're at the bleeding edge of tech. And I was over there in Europe for my first time, and some guy came up to me and he gave me a hug, some complete stranger. He's like, "This is the best night of my life." And I just thought to myself, man, if you can actually capture the best moment of somebody's life, if you could bottle that and you could export that, that's pretty powerful. And that was pretty much the foundation of starting Be at TV. It's like, how can you take the best music moments of somebody's life and really use the power of web to distribute those moments globally? So I packed up my stuff. I moved to London. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, really, like, looking back, I had complete delusions of what could be done. But I thought, if there are people like me that are in cool places like LA that don't have access to this kind of music, to this kind of experiences, imagine what the rest of the world feels like. Imagine what my 15-year-old self that lived in Philadelphia, if you can give him the ability to travel around the world of music festivals at the click of a button. I thought that would be a very powerful platform to build. So I packed up my stuff. I moved to London, and I started Be at TV. This is 2007. At the time, someone said to me, "It's good to be 10 minutes too early." For me, I was probably 20 years too early. So at the time, trying to start a live streaming platform in 2007, I mean, almost everybody thought I was crazy. Like, who was going to watch a music festival or a concert online? And, me, just thinking, me, I'm the exact demographic. And there's a real cult following of people that would love to get these experiences. And I knew deep in my bones that just by, cutting back to the LimeWire file sharing Napster days, you could just see how many people downloaded these illegal music sessions. And I just knew that if you could improve that experience and make it free, that anybody could participate in any music event, I thought it was very powerful. So I went to 4 of some guys that I met when I was traveling from Europe. They couldn't have been more supportive. I kind of told them what I wanted to do, and they all wrote me a check for $50,000, and I was off and away. So with that money, I started Be at TV. I started aggregating the rights to pretty much every electronic music festival under the sun. Again, at the time, the space was so new that everybody,
here you go.
Most of the festival owners, they were like, sure, who's good? I remember specifically, I was talking to James Barton, who owns Creamfields, and I remember it like it was yesterday, because I was in awe of this man. I'd been listening to Creamfields, which is, for those of you guys that aren't into dance music, Creamfields is like, it's an institution in the music festival game. And I sat down with James and I was explaining to him, hey, this is what we want to do. And he's like, who's going to watch a rave in the middle of a field on a computer? And I just said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. There's a big audience for this stuff. And so I got a stack of contracts, and we aggregated the rights to not just music festivals, but nightclubs and everything that was really generating electronic music. I took those stack of contracts and we set out to build BeApp. We got extremely lucky, because about 45 days after we launched the platform, we got a call from Nokia saying, hey, I hear you've got this cool streaming platform. Let's sit down and talk. And the reason why it was cool is because we were working with, at the time, these guys weren't household names, but the very first 3 streams that we ever did, the first thing we ever did was the Swedish House Mafia. Again, they weren't the Swedish House Mafia at the time. They were just 3 cool guys. The second stream we ever did was Calvin Harris. And the third stream we ever did was Deadmau5.
That's insane.
So it's insane now. But in 2008, 2009, it was, they were
Just
We
guys
were
in a
cool
bedroom.
DJs, just guys, cool DJs. They were famous, but they weren't obviously the household megastars that they are. So, we started getting a lot of buzz in London, and Nokia approached us and said, "Hey, can you do what you're doing, but can you do it on a phone?" I said, "Sure." I mean, web is web; it doesn't really matter the device. Again, in 2008, 2009, there's a lot of complexities with streaming to a phone. We didn't have the smart phones that we have today, and especially Nokia was operating on a different operating system. But technically, yes, if we can stream to a computer, we can stream to a device. And the second question, they said, "Would you do it exclusive with us?" And that's kind of when the cash register would ring, and I said, "Oh my God, we have a business." And so I think it was our second month, the third month of being in business. Nokia wrote us a check for I think $50,000, which again, I was just living my dream. I was creating a website and a platform that I thought just would be very cool. I didn't know that we could actually make money from it. And then we hit it out of the park from them. And then 6 months later, they doubled down and they paid $1.1 million. And that was kind of the start of the journey. Fast forward, I ran BeApp TV for, God, I mean, it's been 13 years now. We've had many successes, a ton of failures, but the mission remained the same. It's like, how do you set out to democratize access to the world's best music events? We had offices in London, Berlin, Amsterdam, Sao Paulo. We made a number of different acquisitions. So really trying to solidify our position in the electronic music space. The first company I bought was called Track It Down, which was the first European download store. So they sold music tracks to artists. In the US, everybody kind of knows Beatport, but Track It Down in certain genres, especially in the trance, drum and bass, in certain forms of electronic, they were the definitive company. So we acquired Track It Down, really trying to bring in commerce functionality to streaming. So when you're watching a live stream, you could actually buy the songs in real time. From there, we started acquiring more traditional media assets. So we bought Ibiza Sonica, which is a radio station based in Ibiza. We took a minority position in a company called Ibiza Global Radio. Collectively, they're the number one and number two electronic music radio stations in the world, and really trying to create this modern day media company that has live streaming, commerce, then a few terrestrial radio assets that are really the bedrock of what happens in the electronic music scene. And so, the BeApp TV journey was wild. I mean, some of the stories of getting ready to meeting your heroes. And I think that's analogous to regardless of what industry you're in. But, so many people that I just grew up listening to became friends. I mean, Pete Tong, who had the biggest radio station, the biggest radio electronic music show called Essential Mix, which was live on the BBC every Friday, became a good friend of mine. Sasha, of Sasha and Digweed, who was, for me, he was a god. I becoming friends with these guys and meeting your heroes, it's a fascinating journey.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So, BeApp TV was booming up until COVID. So, I was running a live streaming business that broadcast music festivals and events, and there are no music festivals and events. And that it was just heartbreaking watching just the live event space implode, in not just for me but for everybody around me. So one of the things about COVID, and everybody recognizes that everybody's suffering, but the live entertainment section is dead. It's a zero. The biggest companies in the world, whether it's Live Nation or AEG, people that put on these massive festivals, are now significantly laying off most of their staff. The artists are suffering. The agents and managers that represent the artists are suffering. The publicists are suffering. And there's been a whole industry that's just been completely destroyed because we can't socialize anymore. But with the downside of things, with COVID happening and the live entertainment space imploding, there's been a whole new industry created for people that are still trying to connect and trying to still enjoy music and music experiences. And so while I legitimately cried for about 3 weeks. I was like, it's over. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. As I was going through that, the idea of BeApp came to mind. And so I think, I could have either sat back and waited for the live entertainment industry to turn back on, or I could, kind of take control over at least my own life and my own business future and start a company that could really address the problem that is universal. It's not just a rich person's problem or a poor person's problem. It's everybody can no longer access events. And, going back to what I was first saying about being in Philadelphia, and not having the ability to go anywhere, that's every single person in the world now feels that same impact. And so the ability to not travel is now sprung upon all of us. The ability to not listen to music or go to music concerts is now sprung upon all of us. The ability not to be able to hang out with your friends has now been sprung upon all of us. And to create a platform that could really address those issues in a fun, entertaining, lighthearted, aspirational way was the sole purpose behind starting BeApp. That's a very long-winded way of taking you through the journey, but that's from start to May.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I mean, there's so many offshoots that I want to get into. The first, though, I'm sure you've been asked this by a bunch of people in the last 6 months. I would love to get your take on what the future of live events, specifically in the entertainment and music space, looks like. And I think it's, of course, super up in the air and no one can predict the future. But between going back to the way traditional live events were, virtual events, and then ultimately in the future, like some kind of VR, AR experience that maybe combines the two. I'd love to get your take on just where you think the industry is going and loosely like what timeline that looks like.
Sure. Live events aren't going anywhere. I mean, as human beings, we inherently like to live in clusters. I live in New York City right now. I'm in downtown Manhattan. Everyone's like, why would you live in New York City? It's like, well, why does anybody live in any city? We tend to congregate in large gatherings, and there's something about music events that are so freeing. I mean, there's so many reasons why people go to concerts and to festivals. That's never going to be removed. I mean, it's a sense of escapism. You forget your problems. Two, it's a place for you to connect with your friends. And music is universal. So the live entertainment space, specifically when it comes to music events, that is going to come back. But I think when it comes back, it's going to be slightly modified. For me, who's been in the live streaming game my entire life, there's the hardest thing was trying to change consumer behavior. People have been going to concerts their entire life. Watching it on a phone or watching it on a laptop doesn't make sense for a lot of people. But it all kind of crystallized when my 73-year-old mother, she called me after me doing DBA TV. I'd done it for 14 years. She said, wow, I finally understand what you do for a living. I said, after 14 years, you finally get it? She's like, yeah, well, I've been attending church on Zoom and I get it. I finally get it. I miss going to church. I can't connect with the pastor. Now I'm getting a virtual experience. And it doesn't mean my mom's not going to go back to church when it opens, but it does mean that we're now shifting consumer behavior where people are now understanding that there is a different way for you to vicariously participate in things as opposed to actually going. There's a level of convenience of not having to leave your house or your apartment to attend one of these events. It's also free. So, one of the things about going to a live experience is there's a premium. And so while I think that's going to come roaring back, the Madison Square Gardens of the world and the Coachellas of the world have always remained elusive to 99% of the world, probably 99.99999% of the world. And, I don't want to say it's an elitist thing, but if you think of just the world as a whole, most people in the world are never going to be able to attend one of these experiences. So what's happened now is most people in the world didn't realize that they could get access to these experiences through live streaming. And I think COVID has just accelerated the conversation where now people understand fully that they could attend virtual experiences for free. They can go. Coachella's been streaming for the past 12 years. People didn't know that it was a free event to watch on YouTube. And I think now the consumer behavior is now being transformed where people know they can vicariously participate in events. So I think these things are going to coexist. When the event space comes back, I think today, live video streaming is super important. And in many ways, streaming an event and digital participation in the event is sometimes better than going to the experience in a hybrid way. You have different access. I mean,
in sports, I think for sure.
oh, I 100% agree with you. Like going to a football stadium, you can barely see anything.
Yeah, you have no idea what's going on.
Same. In a music event, you can't go backstage, but here in a live stream, we can actually give you backstage access. In a music event, sometimes you have to brave the conditions, especially in the music festival world. In a live stream, it's safe, it's convenient. You can do whatever you like under your own terms. So I think in many ways, the live streaming business is now permanently cemented in people's minds. For the 1% of people that can afford to go or have the free time to go, they're of course they're going to go. But BeApp TV, the first company it wasn't necessarily built for the 1%. Sometimes I go into meetings, especially in LA, especially in London, especially in New York, and I tell people this is less than a year ago. I was in a VC pitch in LA, and this venture capitalist looked at me, and I was explaining to him about the benefits of BeApp TV, and he said, "If I want to go to Madison Square Garden, I'll just go." And I just thought to myself, "Oh my God." That is the most elitist thing that I've ever just go to Madison Square Garden. Most people are worried about how they're going to pay their rent. They can't just pack up and get on a plane and pay for a hotel and pay for $300 tickets and that's the world. That's what most of the population is. And so if you can address that need and make access free, I think that's going to coexist with the live entertainment space coming back. As far as VR is concerned, it's coming. I mean, if you look at what Fortnite has been doing, the Epic Games guys in the in-app experiences, I don't know if you saw any of the.
I've seen a little, like the Travis Scott concert I saw, which was crazy.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And then you have companies like The Wave, which is a fully immersive VR. The problem I have with VR today is the same problem that I've had with the events that only have 1% of the population able to attend it. Not everybody has the devices. And so for me, I'm trying to democratize access for everyone. And if I say you need a $450 Oculus device in order to be able to experience one of these events, it's kind of like, well, what have I really done? I haven't really opened up the world to those less fortunate that can attend these events. So while I think VR is coming, and I think it's coming very strong, I think the cost of production is very high. So the frequency is much less. Since COVID started at BeApp, we've done well over 450 live streams of the biggest artists in the world. To do that, to produce that kind of show in VR, it's time consuming, it's expensive. The second issue I have with VR is the artist performance isn't live. And I think in a time when so much of us are trying to congregate around an experience, that live interaction is so important. Watching stuff on VOD, it just doesn't have the same immediacy. The same way if you're watching a sports event and it happened yesterday, but you're watching a replay, even if you were sequestered yourself, it just doesn't work. So I think to a long-winded way of answering your question, I think the immediate, I think live entertainment may come back if we're lucky next fall, 2021 in the US. I think it will coexist with live streams, mainly because the monetization of things and how event owners make money, they're going to need to do a live stream to balance out their P&L. How festivals and events are funded, there's a couple of different things. One is through ticket sales. Two is through merch and F&B, so food and beverage. But a huge portion of that is sponsorship and brands. So like if you have a music festival, big brands pay a lot of money to have naming rights or to have placards or to have their brand associated with the event. The problem with an event is even something like Coachella, you only have 150,000 attendees, whereas the live stream, you have 75 million. So the reach for sponsors looking to market their products to consumers is just, you get a far better ROI by having a live stream component to a physical event. So I think the future of events, it's if you are an event owner and you don't have a live streaming component,
you're missing out.
You're missing out on a huge amount of money that could be made by making your event that is in one location an event that is truly global.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think, short term, everything, it's the sky is falling, but even midterm, but especially long term, if you're an event host or owner, you're probably better off because now you have multiple revenue streams. As you mentioned, the streaming side is virtually uncapped, and you can choose to make it free if you want, or charge $1 or $2, and that, that is complimentary to the people in person that are fortunate enough to go in person. I will say, and I'm sure you agree, like I've been to some of these festivals. Unfortunately, I've never gone to Europe, but like the Coachellas of the world. And there is something about being in the mix, like in person, that is just unparalleled. And for people that are fortunate enough to do that, when that comes back eventually, that you're right, like that'll never go away because there's just no replacement for it. But it's so great to see, and it will be great to see in the future the democratization of this experience where everybody can partake and at least say that they got a piece of it.
I was there. I was there. That's everything. And, I think it's interesting when you say that, because a lot of social experiences are being chosen, not necessarily for their fun value, but really just for the ability to say I was there. It's interesting, like with Coachella now happening on 2 weekends, and a big event like Burning Man that exists over the course of several days. You see people that come for one day, and they'll change their outfit 10 times, and they'll take photos in 10 different outfits just so that they can drip feed out across their social feed about, oh my God, I was there day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And so it's funny how social culture has really changed how people perceive events. But also another point on the live streaming world versus the physical event. What COVID has done is really created a new timetable for socialization. Whereas before it's, I've reserved my social concert going to Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now it's every day Saturday. I mean, there's live streaming and COVID have really made any day, you could have a social music experience any night of the week, which again opens up a whole host of monetary benefits when you can take something that was reserved for 2 days a week and now you can make it 7 days a week. I mean, the NFL has tried very hard they started on Sundays, then they have Monday Night Football, and now they have Thursday Night Football, and how you can take something that was once confined to a limited number of days. If you can stretch that out, it just makes more money for everybody and offers more choice to consumers.
Definitely. I want to dive into this concept of community building because I think, community has always been important, but there seems to be an increased emphasis on this digital community. A lot of brands that I'm hearing from in the last few years it's a community first, but it hasn't always been that way. And I think when I look at your journey, you were very ahead and very bullish on community building in the electronic music space way early. And I think that's really interesting. You mentioned the process, of course, a lot of successes, a lot of failures. I would love to hear from you, like lessons learned from being a community builder early on, maybe before the social media platforms were super evolved, and kind of how that process went.
Yeah. It's funny, electronic music, people that listen to it, we were always kind of the misfits. And so just the journey of, especially in America, if you listen to dance music, back in 2002, 2003, you were an outcast. And there was something about the dance floor or the festival pit, which it brings together communities. I mean, all different walks of life, no matter gay, straight, what color you are all kind of there in that same moment, dancing together and enjoying the same experience. And so from a community perspective, electronic music was like the ultimate community. It was the most inclusive thing that I had ever seen. And so when you have just so many different disparate personalities from different income levels, different socioeconomic classes, different colors, different genders, different sexual orientation, but all could collectively coexist in a music event, it was community 101. So trying to leverage that and really turn that into something much greater by the power of the web, it was already done for me. I didn't have to do much. I just needed to put a camera in front of it and let everybody actually see it. I think from a failure perspective, we made a lot of choices from a content perspective that probably were just wrong, just because of the type of music that we were streaming. So, at BATV, we were always at the bleeding edge of what was cool. Again, the Swedish House Mafia, deadmau5, Calvin Harris. In 2010, 2009, they were the coolest people under the sun. But as they became a little bit more commercial, we always stayed, some may say, a couple of steps behind. I like to think it was a couple of the steps ahead with where the sound was going. And so when the big EDM movement happened in the U.S., we kind of shied away from that, and we still stayed very credible to the electronic music scene and focused on what people like to say underground sounds. And so from a monetization perspective, some cool doesn't make money. Cool certainly gets the fans excited and gives you a lot of credibility and makes listeners love you because no one else is focusing on it. But from a business perspective, I don't know. Looking back, had we rode the EDM wave and continued to do big EDM sounds, it may have been a different journey for me business wise. But I think this isn't just with streaming. I think it's anything. You have to like what you do, and the music for me was always the most important thing. And I just loved the stuff that we were streaming. It was my fingerprints weren't necessarily on the content, but the stuff that we were streaming was the stuff that I liked, and everybody in the BeApp TV office loved. And so we were fans first, in journalists, video journalists second. But we were always we just loved it. And so because we were from that community, it was very easy to continue to grow that community. And we got the benefit of just the nature of the sounds and the nature of the scene, of helping to be one of the vanguards of building the community. And the only thing we really had to do was just bring our cameras in, and select good events and stream them well.
I feel like I could talk about the process for BeApp TV forever. But I want to shift to BeApp as well. I would love you to talk through how the app actually works. At its core, like we've said before, it democratizes the ability for major artists to stream to the world. But also, I know you guys released features recently that allow everybody to be able to stream to the world. So talk about the functionality a little bit.
When COVID first started, it's interesting because a lot of the big platforms, the big five, I like to call them, they all came out with their own version of in-home artist streaming. And it was much more reactionary to what was happening as opposed to thinking about the key pillars of who the customers are. And, for me, I think the customers, yes, it's the viewer at home, but the customers also the artists. The artists are just as big customers of us as the fan viewing at home. But then also how you make money from these things are the brands who finance these things. So thinking about those three pillars of how you can create a value proposition for the artist, for the fan, and for the brands was something that's was super important for us. So when COVID first started, also a lot of the live streams that we saw were just boring. I watched some of this stuff, and the world was already depressing enough. We didn't need more sad singing and video on demand. So it's a dirty little secret, but most of these live streams, I can tell you, just having done this for a decade and a half, it wasn't live. So they had pre-record grainy videos of famous artists sitting in their living room crying and saying how terrible the world is. And I understand we're all in a bad place, but I think our purpose, for those of us that can, our purpose is to inspire and provide a sense of escapism to the world. Everybody's super depressed. Even now, people have a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world. And I think music events, traditional physical music events, that was part of the reason you went. I said it earlier in our chat, but people go to the dance floor or they go to a concert to forget their problems. And what I wanted to do was really, really, really create an environment where, yes, COVID's happening all around us, but you can log into the BeApp and really get a sense of escapism. And there's, in many ways, the way that we stream in BeApp is much more intimate, much more personal, much harder to do than streaming on BeApp TV. With BeApp TV, when you're streaming a festival, I've got cannons, I've got smoke, I've got sirens, I've got pretty girls, you've got the fans, you've got so many things that you could point the camera at. Whereas with BeApp, especially in the beginning of COVID when we first started, we have an artist in their living room. We can't go anywhere. Like, we physically could not shoot anything. Like for our launch stream, we streamed Cascade live at the Grand Canyon, which I don't know if you had an opportunity to see. It was amazing. But even that was socially distanced. Like, Cascade was strong enough to say, listen, I want to do something crazy in a place where there are no people. So we brought in red cams and a bunch of drones, and we did a very high profile moving singing music video, but live. That was live. So I think the functionality, it first starts with how can we take an artist that's either in their living room or at the Grand Canyon, and connect them with fans? And then how can we create a social environment that connects fans with each other? And so much of going to a music event is the social aspect. And that's one of the things that YouTube was just missing. And the television broadcast on CBS, and they just missed that whole aspect of allowing people to communicate with each other. Everyone's locked in their houses, locked in their apartments. No one can talk to each other. And so using the artist as the anchor, we use that as a way to create a social experience. So now people can watch a live stream, but they can also talk to each other. They can meet new friends. They can invite their own friends, and they can come in and have almost a replicated, quarantined version of going to a concert. We've also gamified that experience and really tried to provide social capital to the fans that are watching. So as we said before about Coachella, I was there. One of the things we built in was a virtual front row. So you can actually insert yourself in the virtual front row. So everybody around the world that's watching BeApp knows that you were there, and you have your own icon or your own face, or we've linked it to your Snapchat or to your Instagram profile, so you can actually show that, hey, you're in the front row. We also have chat, so everybody can interact and chat like you normally would. But we also have bang messages, so that when there's, in some of our live streams, I mean, there's 50,000, 100,000 people watching. Sometimes the chat is moving so fast you can't actually see who's there, but you can send a message with a bang. So that means if you're watching Katy Perry, for example, you can make it rain and say, oh my God, Kallaway's here, I'm in the front row. And really, I call it the Jumbotron moment. It's like if you go to a Lakers game and you're sitting in the stadium and your face appears on the big screen up top, that's a big moment. Everybody in the stadium sees you. It's the same thing with BeApp. You have the ability to send these global messages, and you can make it rain with dollars. You can send hearts. You can make it rain with confetti, and put whatever message you like up in lights so that everybody around the world can see you.
That's awesome.
With all of that we were doing for large artists, and we've streamed 400 like big artists, Katy Perry and Diplo and Steve Aoki and DJ Khaled, and the list goes on and on and on. But again, I wanted to create an environment that it wasn't just for big famous artists. And so going back to my Philadelphia story, when I was growing up, if you wanted to get into the music business, you either had to have a friend that worked at WME, or you needed somebody at Warner. If you wanted to be a singer, it was just hard. And there were so many barriers that prevented people from getting into the industry. And I think one of the great things that happened when in the UK, it was called X Factor. But in the US, when American Idol came about, was they really lowered the bar for artists trying to make a splash or make a career for themselves. Rather than having to have a friend that worked at Warner Music, the only thing you had to do was wait until Simon Cowell came into town and then go stand in line and audition. And if you were good, you would get on TV and really give yourself a chance. I wanted to lower the bar even further. So let's not wait for the Four or The Voice or American Idol to come to town. Let's give people the tools where all you need is a mobile phone. And if you're good, just start singing. And different from YouTube, for us providing people the tools to allow themselves to stream themselves, we've gamified that experience and we've made it a competition. So at the moment, we're giving away $1,000 every single day to whoever wins the leaderboard. So the way you win the leaderboard is you invite your friends, family, and if you're good, hopefully people share it. But whoever gets the most views that day wins. And I think that is another way of really flattening the access points. So we're flattening the access points for you to experience big famous artists, but we're also flattening the access points. If you want to be a famous artist, we're giving you the tools to go out there and do it. We're giving you the tech platform, but we're also giving you money. And so there's a lot of bedroom artists or artists that used to play at the local bar or earned a living by playing at the weddings or even played on like stage 6 at Coachella. That business is gone. Those people can't, there's nowhere for them to perform. And so for us, creating almost the new room, the new stage 6 at Coachella, the new local bar that you can come perform and then give you the ability to earn money on a daily basis was something important. So the combination of BeApp, it's live entertainment, with a gamified social layer on top of it, taking big artists and small artists and really allowing anybody who wants to perform to give them the tools that lets them perform.
I love that top down and bottom up. Top down with the huge artists, getting people to come for those experiences, but then interacting with the platform, and then bottom up building the next generation of artists. I really like that kind of two-phased approach. I guess a question around like the Cascades, the Katy Perrys, the DJ Khaled's. How did you guys get them to perform? I think Coca-Cola was a big sponsor for this initial series you ran. And is that the third pillar and how you kind of bring the brands in to sponsor the artists? Talk about that model a little bit.
Yeah. So, getting access to artists, again, there was a lot of artists that wanted to perform. I mean, like our very first stream of Cascade, live from the Grand Canyon. His one of the agents on his team is a guy who was in my fraternity at USC.
That helps.
His name's Brent Weinstein. Yeah, it does help. So Brent is turned into a big macher over at UTA. But Brent and I were chatting about the different things we could do, and he said Cascade has this brilliant idea that he wants to do live from the Grand Canyon, and I said that's perfect. Let's do it. And so a lot of the talent that we got on board, a lot of them had their own special projects that they always wanted to do. But they needed a company that knew how to do it. I mean, just because you can live stream doesn't mean you should. And there's so many people that are doing live streams now, which is the access point to live streaming is so easy. And there have been so many people that are disheartened or disenfranchised with live streaming just because it doesn't go well. And just because anybody with a phone can live stream doesn't mean they do it well. So I think for us, the first part was how can we take artists that really want to do something special and give them an environment to do it? Yes, we're going to pay you some money, but we're also going to give you world-class production, and we're going to make sure that it works. The second part is we've built in a whole suite of e-commerce tools where we're allowing artists to sell stuff. So one of the things about marketing in the music industry, if you have an album coming out, it's funny, like 5 years ago, you would still take out an ad on the side of a bus, or you'd take a billboard in Times Square. In the days of Spotify, that just seems so 1998.
Yeah,
it's
so
like if you're trying to drive clicks, I need to see a billboard and then get out my phone and actually type it in. It's just a disjointed experience. So for us, if we aggregate all of artist fans into a single location, we put them all into the room. So for someone like Katy Perry, during our live stream of Katy Perry, we aggregated all of her fans. Katy promoted it, we promoted it, we streamed it across her social. But then during the live stream, we launched the pre-sale of her album. So now Katy had hundreds of thousands. I don't remember the exact number, but high hundreds of thousands of people there that she just promoted her album to. So really taking aspirational content and making a gateway for commerce is another reason why a lot of artists started coming to us. Because if you have something you need to promote, we have the tools to give you a lot of eyeballs and then really facilitate a 45-minute moving, living, breathing commercial, which is much more, it makes people click a lot quicker than if you just have a billboard in Times Square. The business model varies. So for the larger artists, we're paying. A lot of artists, we're doing different kind of structures. We're providing free production. We're providing the ability to sell stuff. For our bedroom artists, we're gamifying that experience so that you have to win. So if you bring us, whoever brings the most viewers gets paid in our daily competition for prizes. In October, we're getting ready to open up the prize money. So at the moment, we're giving prizes to just number 1, number 2, and number 3. Starting October 1st, we're going to give prizes to our top 10 performers, which is you have a very good chance of winning. There's a very good chance of winning. I think if you have 100 people watch your live stream, you will win money. Which again, we're not Twitch, so at the moment we're still a little bit smaller, but the bar is very low for artists to win. But it's interesting because we are now getting so much amazing talent that is coming through the pipes that most people have never heard of. We're almost the frontline A&R now. We are the new Universal Warner Music, because rather than having to send out a bunch of guys to smoky clubs, it's like the artists are coming to us, and we're able to filter through the best of the best just based on their viewership.
Yeah, it's funny, and I don't know as much about the mechanics behind the music industry as I'm sure you do, but for people listening, I think it would be helpful to just give a quick highlight of like how the music industry works, because I think people forget that you've got these massive celebrity artists, but a lot of their revenue, I mean, the big ones have a lot of streams. It seems like a lot of different revenue streams, but even massive artists that a lot of their revenue was tied up in like merch sales and concert tickets, right? Not from the streams of their album on Spotify and Apple Music. And those have essentially evaporated, right? So a lot of those artists are struggling to make the revenue to cover their monthly burn. So I would love you to just like talk about that a little bit and how dramatic of an issue it is for these artists out there.
Yeah, and sorry if I skipped over that. You have so much knowledge about the space. I kind of was just talking to you. I forgot that we were doing a I forgot we were doing a podcast. Yeah, the recording industry has always been an interesting model. And again, I'm not going to disparage the labels because they do provide a very valuable service. But the labels, typically, how it works, and depending on what your split looks like, you would get an advance. So if you're good and you get signed, the label will give you, let's say, $150,000, which is recoupable upon the money that you bring in. So a lot of artists, and it depends on how the deal is structured. If the label is just doing purely based on album sales, that's one thing. Something that's gotten quite popular is a lot of labels are doing 360 deals, which means that the artists the label gets 360, or it gets a percentage of everything you do. That includes touring, that includes merch, and album sales. The biggest thing that's happened when Napster and Kazaa and all of these platforms that I was talking about at the beginning of our conversation, when they came about, the recording industry just completely fell apart. As Spotify was the savior. I mean, it is a brilliant company. What they managed to do was at least allow people to make some money, because if the direction that it was going in, recorded music would have just been free. It would have been commoditized because you can get it anywhere. There were so many file sharing services out there that you could just get access to whatever you want. So when Spotify came in, they actually created a business from it. But the amount of money that artists are making from their plays on Spotify or Apple Music or even on YouTube is really low. I mean, like really, really, really low. And so even if you have a hit album out, and again, no one buys albums anymore, but if you have a hit song out that's getting a lot of plays across the streaming platforms, you're not making any money. So the idea of the music industry now is you want to make a big song so that you can go on tour, because ticket sales are still the predominant form of revenue driving for a lot of artists. And touring with COVID has now been decimated. So if you look at someone like Justin Bieber, who's got his big tour coming up in May, I don't know what that will net, but it's a lot. Someone like Bruno Mars, we're talking. There's a lot of money changing hands, and not just for Bruno, but for his entire team, for the production guys, for the grips, for the gaffers, for the tour bus operator, for all of the different components that are required to keep a tour going. There's just so much money involved based on an artist, and those artists are dependent on that. And there's a lot of other people around that artist that are depending on that. And now we've been reduced to that no longer exists, and artists are just earning through Spotify clicks or YouTube clicks. A lot of artists are trying to figure out where the income's coming from. So for us, almost being the 2020 version of a venue, really providing an environment where people can earn, where artists can actually earn money. It's interesting because we're creating a gateway between an artist who's trying to connect with their fans, but also earn money from their fans. And then you have brands that are sitting here that are trying to connect with the fans, but trying to figure out what their position is between the artist and the fan. And if the brands can make that connection between an artist and the fans, then everybody wins. Because now the brand actually brings these experiences to life. There's a lot of goodwill generated for the brand for actually saying, oh, here's an experience that you otherwise would not get unless we were involved. Fans are happy because they get content. Artists are happy because they have an audience and they earn money. And the brands are happy because they now are bringing experiences to the world which would have no longer existed without them.
Yeah, I think I heard the top 1% of streamers, essentially, or artists on Spotify make 99% of the revenue. So it's like, it's crazy when people think like, oh, you have 1 million streams, like that must have made you so much money. Like really, it's pennies compared to what they were earning elsewhere.
Not just Spotify. I mean, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere. All the streaming platforms, and you understand why it happens that way. It's funny because everybody gets so up in arms about Spotify. They're still not making money. Still,
right?
So it's hard where you look at the music business. It's like everybody can be upset that Spotify's not paying out anything, but who's winning in that scenario? I think the ultimate beneficiary from all of these things is the fans. Because the fans now have access to every song ever made for $9.99. But from the business side of it, the artists aren't happy, the labels aren't happy, the publishers aren't happy, Spotify's not happy. The fan is the ultimate beneficiary. And, I think we're still trying to figure out what the music industry evolves into. And I think streaming, it may not be the silver bullet, but it is a big answer. Because again, we're taking an event that was once maybe only attended by 3,000 people, and now we've given the ability for anyone in the world to access that room. And when you have a bigger market, more consumers, more fans, there's just more money that can change hands for the artists that are willing to amplify their experience to a global audience.
Yeah, when you think about the artists, I mean, these people, they love making and playing music. So now you go from, they might have only been doing one show or two shows a week. And I know most of them, especially in EDM, are doing more, but the strain and to travel and take private jets from here to Vegas, et cetera, to do all these shows, when now you could do, in the future, maybe 2022, 23, you could do one show in person and then 5 shows virtual from your living room, still playing the songs you love and still make a portion of that money back. So I think there's a lot of upside for artists that can innovate and kind of disrupt their own process.
I agree. And it's funny what's happening with the live streaming space. A lot of artists are having to innovate much more. Because the thing about live streaming is once you do it once, everybody's seen it. And so it's like a comedian. When a comedian tells a joke, you can tell that joke once, but the second it goes on a Netflix special, that joke is dead. You can never use it again. And so you could typically, comedians and even artists, they could tour multiple cities, multiple nights. And that was one of the things that made, when I first started with electronic music, so compelling from a streaming perspective, because DJs play different sets every night. Whereas if you're streaming a hip hop concert, you've got 15 songs and it's those same 15 songs every single night. And if the entire world watched your first performance, they may come back the next day, but they're going to come back the third day and fourth day. Whereas in the electronic music world, you could play a different show every single night. I mean, I remember we just as a stunt, we did this thing with Carl Cox, and he did 4 performances on Via TV in one day. He streamed from a beach club, he streamed from like a little disco bar, he streamed from a festival, and then he did an after party. And it was 4 completely different performances. Same artist, different time. And you have the luxury of doing that. And each of the sets was a 2-hour performance on each of the sets. Whereas in some of the other genres, specifically when you have vocals, it's hard to do that much. And so what we're seeing a lot of now is the aspiring artists. We have a number of artists that are coming back to the platform every single day. It's unbelievable the breadth of their catalog. They're doing covers, they're writing new music, just because they know if they have a built-in audience in BeApp, they need to come back every single day and they need to feed that beast. The fans want to hear the hits. Like if you go to the Rolling Stones, yes, you want to hear the hits, but do you want to hear the hits every single night for 30 nights in a row? You want to hear some evolution to it. And so there's a lot of innovation happening because live streams are now giving you access to a global audience. You have to evolve your performance or else it's not going to be interesting or compelling on day 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, it's super interesting. All right, I want to shift to some of these other questions. And you mentioned you were in a VC pitch before, and I'm assuming you had to raise a considerable amount of money over this time period, and especially for BeApp, for digital products, usually the companies have to raise a decent amount initially. So a question I like to ask is around like lessons learned from investor pitches. And we have a variety of people listening. Some are just amped about discovering new brands and products, but others actually either founders or aspiring founders that learn from these tactical lessons. So anything you could share, either positive or like lessons learned from investor pitches would be awesome.
I hate investor pitching. It's the absolute worst thing in the world. I enjoy talking. I hate pitching. And I think most entrepreneurs share my pain. It's the most disheartening thing in the world when you do something for a living. And I'm not saying I'm good, but in the live streaming world, I'm pretty good. My team is as good as it gets, and it's soul destroying when you sit in the room and some 27-year-old analyst who's never run his own P&L tells you about your business, and what it is a very, very, very frustrating process. So I guess like the one thing I would say is if you don't have to raise money from VCs, don't do it. I can't think of anything that will crush someone's dream than being told 90 times in a row. No matter how delusional you are about the company that you want to build, it hurts when you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. On the other side, all it takes is one. And one yes kind of makes all the other no's disappear. And so if you truly believe in what you're pitching, somebody out there will share your belief and they'll get behind you. It's just that process of going out raising money is a very, very, very big distraction, especially if your company's humming. So like, I've gone in. I can't even think about how many rounds that we've done at BeApp TV. But when you're cooking, and especially if you're a smaller team, when you're really operating, it's hard to shift gears into fundraising mode. And part of the problem with fundraising is it's also a full-time job. As the CEO, founder of the company, you need to be fully involved. And the problem is to bifurcate those responsibilities between running your company and raising money. Sometimes it's hard because a lot of times you just take your eye off the ball. So if you're generating a significant amount of revenue that helps you stay cash flow positive, but you need some growth capital, you say, okay, let me go raise money. But if you're raising money, who's making sure that the ship is on the right track? So I would say if you don't have to raise money, I just wouldn't do it. Or if you don't have to raise VC money. And it depends on what stage you're at. I mean, a lot of people that may be listening to that, I'm still a super, super small guy. We have a small company. I think there are certain industries where you need growth capital, but we're not in the widget game. We don't make something for $1 and sell it for $3 that needs an injection of capital to help us scale. We sell pixels and fairy dust. It's we're selling dreams, and how we monetize those dreams is through sponsors who tap into those ideas. So another thing I would say is the biggest thing is I know I said I don't like raising money, but never run out of it. It's probably the most important thing in the world. And I'd say 99% of the failures I see around are for people who just run out of cash. For BeApp TV, running an electronic music and then music festival streaming business for 13 years, keeping that thing afloat with a P&L, with big staff and multiple operators across the world. There's a lot involved in just making sure that the ship stays on the right track. And probably another one of the biggest things that will kill you is if you have sleepless nights because you're worried if you're going to make payroll next month. There's been so many times. I've had, I say sleepless nights, I say sleepless years, where I've probably aged just because I was so worried if my baby's going to go down the tubes. And it's a hard thing in the consumer world when you have a company that's that loved. With BeApp TV, if you know it, you love it, or you never heard of us. But like, people love that company, and then to know that you have so much support and the video views that you're putting up, you're getting hundreds of millions of people watching your stuff, and you can't monetize it and you can't raise money on it, it's soul destroying. So I think you have to be extremely, extremely, extremely self-confident in your own abilities and extremely dogmatic in your views that it's going to work no matter what. And sometimes I would leave VC pitches, and if I get a pass, and I've got lots of passes, I laugh it off. I'm like, oh my God, this guy can't see the future. And one of the things is the amount of phone calls I've gotten since COVID started, like, oh my God, Ray, you're a genius. You sold this thing 15 years early. I said, yeah, well, should have gave me money 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's too late now.
Yeah, it's too late now. We're in a different path now. So I think that it's interesting because I'm looking at the next generation of entrepreneurs, young people starting out. It's funny how they're approaching the VC world. I think my generation, guys that are between 37 and 45, we're kind of built. That's what you do. You start a company, you go get VC capital, or you get some seed angel investment, then you go get VC capital. And I think the younger generation are kind of foregoing that because they're able to build audience directly through some of these other big tech platforms that have given them direct access to consumers, direct access to fundraising. They can crowdsource the funding, and there's a lot of ways to get capital to run the business as opposed to the VC route nowadays.
Yeah, it's insane that the tools that are available, like you can build the audience via social for free. You can build the platform via like no code builders like Bubble and all these other platforms for almost no money. So if you just have the time and the eagerness, you can pretty much build a tech company from scratch with no money. And that's presenting, to your point, I think I agree. I think a lot of people are not even taking this, all right, how fast can I raise money approach? They're saying, how long can I go without raising money? And some of them are being able to find profitability before they need to raise. And that's kind of a control your own destiny type situation.
I love that. Nothing gives an entrepreneur more power than having their fate in their own hands. because that's everything. And a lot of times, um, when you take the wrong money, because sometimes, and I've done this once, I've taken money from the wrong people, and that is also soul destroying because if people don't fully understand your business and they try to make business decisions, it's very hard. And that's the one thing I've learned about very, 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 very high net worth individuals or people that manage big money. They think they know everything. And so they think they're just really, really smart about a number of things. And they are. They are, but there are certain people when you're getting into a very niche type of business, like BeApp TV was of live streaming something very specific. That is it's unless you're in the trenches every single day, you don't know the nuances of what it takes to make that company work. And sometimes if you can come in from the outside, you're like, why are you using this camera? Why aren't you doing that? Explain my production decisions to a venture capitalist. It just seems it's a waste of time for me and it's a waste of time for them.
Yeah, totally. A question I'd love to ask, and it'll be interesting for you because you kind of have essentially two companies to answer for, is if you could teleport back to the first couple of months you were starting, what would you tell yourself? And maybe share your answer for at the beginning of BeApp TV 13 years ago, and then maybe at the beginning of BeApp, 8 months ago or so.
I'd say at the beginning of BeApp TV, I would probably say it's all going to be okay. And don't take it all so seriously. Because, I started BeApp TV specifically because I loved music festivals and events. I loved it. It was my life. I mean, I lived it. I breathed it. And I think over the course of running a company and being in an industry for so long, sometimes you forget that. You forget the love of it, and it becomes a job. And it's funny, like I probably haven't been to a music festival. But I take it back. I went to Rolling Loud, which is a big hip hop festival we streamed just before COVID. But I really don't go to music festivals anymore, which is sad. When it was such a big part of my life that made me take these courageous steps to try to start a company just based on that. And I think I would go back and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Still enjoy the feeling of going out and the experiences, because you have to know who your consumers are. And it's hard to really get a feel for the crowd unless you're in the crowd. So I think the one thing I would say is don't quit. It's going to be okay. Continue to love the industry that you've helped to build. With BeApp, I think it's also new that I don't know. I mean, I think I made every mistake possible in BeApp TV. I've learned, and that's I guess the easiest way to learn is running a streaming company for 13, 14 years. You learn a lot, and so with BeApp, I'm making a lot better decisions. Just because I probably made every mistake you could possibly make in the world of streaming. So I think if I would say, if I could talk to myself at the beginning of BeApp, I probably would have leaned into some of the functionality that we're getting ready to launch in 2 weeks. We had a real time crunch. So when COVID started and we first started building BeApp, I didn't know how long COVID was going to last. So I really had a gun to my head from getting a product built and getting it launched into the market. So I didn't have the luxury of time, but I wish I could have launched the product that we're going to launch in 3 weeks. So I don't know when this is going to air, but we have been building something behind the scenes, which in my opinion is going to transform live streaming. It will be a step change with how people watch these live events. And I wish that I could have launched the product that we're getting ready to launch. It's still the same underlying fundamentals that you've seen now, but it is a step change. I truly believe the people over at Twitch, the people over even at Instagram are probably going to take a step back and say, wow, these guys have escalated the bar of what it means to vicariously participate in a live streaming experience.
It's awesome.
I named two big players. I just said Amazon and Facebook. It's that good.
That's crazy.
Again, leaning into the social aspect of what we do. And one of the things that I'm seeing with BeApp is there's little communities being built inside the company already. Like I'm seeing the same people watch the same artists on a regular basis. It's funny. We have a series going with DJ Jazzy Jeff right now. So we stream him every Wednesday and every Saturday. And, it's not a crazy audience, but there's, maybe 10,000, 15,000 people that come in and watch each session. But you see the same people, and you're starting to community build around DJ Jazzy Jeff. What we're going to do is really lean into that with all the different communication tools that you can think of. So the first step is we are having very similar to like Zoom technology or Squadcast, which we're working on, where you can do live video chats with 15, 16 people in real time within a live streaming environment. That's never been done. I mean, House Party, which is another Epic Games product, kind of does it, but not like this. So I think leaning into the ability for people to really socialize within BeApp with a live stream experience behind it, I think it's huge. When I first moved to London, it was crazy to me because people went for dinner, they went for lunch, and they actually sat down and talked to each other. And I know it sounds so simple, but in the US, whenever I meet a group of friends, it always has a different focal point. It's like I'll meet a group of friends to play pool, or we'll meet a group of friends to watch a game, or we'll meet a group of friends. It's never just, hey, let's sit down and talk. And it's funny, you always need like a call to action to trigger a social experience. So like the concert, we're going to the concert together, we're going to the festival together. And I think leaning into that, it's like if you have a music event that starts at 6:00, or you're going to the bar to play darts at 6:00, or you're going to the bar to watch a game at 6:00, if we can use our live streams as an anchor to get people to socialize, I think that's super powerful. So now we have people coming in because they want to watch a live stream that's starting at 6:00. The live stream almost becomes the backdrop. And what's even more powerful than watching an artist is being able to communicate and talk with friends that you can't see because we're all locked in our houses at the moment. So really leaning into that and then gamifying that experience, and then creating these watch parties where you and your friends can come together in your own, let's call it, you get AAA access. So it's like you and your friends have your own VIP Madison Square Garden booth. I think it's going to be super powerful. There's a lot of layers inside of that, but that's kind of the foundation of really leaning into the social side of live streaming.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, it's so true. There really is no way to like collaboratively. It's almost like a FaceTime with multiple people embedded while you're like at a concert, which like doesn't exist.
You nailed it. It's that. Plus, imagine if those people could watch you. So not only can you have 20 of your friends in your own VIP room where you could FaceTime each other and watch an experience, we have another layer on top of that where people can watch the watchers. So there can be a group of people watching me and my friends watch 20 people. And if you look at Instagram with this voyeuristic perspective of people watching other people live their lives, I think that's a huge, huge thing. So we have watchers watching the watchers watching the watchers. It's like this rabbit hole of funnel of that the artist may have been the anchor, but you may not even know that they're watching the artist. You're just watching a group of people hang out together.
Yeah, that's going to be huge.
It is going to be something, I think, transformative. And so, for us, right now we're starting with music. It's universal. I have it's kind of all I've ever done. But the functionality that we're building is really going to transcend music. I think that it's really creating an environment where you're using live streaming to connect people. It's the ultimate. Sounds very aggressive for me to say that. It's the ultimate social network. It's a social network which is truly social. If you want to meet a new person, if you want to go on a date, here's your virtual club to take them to. It really adds a whole new layer into where the world of live streaming is today.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps, honestly, hearing about it, because you think about all the other, I mean, the music use case, I'm a huge music fan, so are you. You could do that all day, but like sports, for example, like if there's a Eagles Packers and you want to watch a group of diehard Eagles fans react, like that watching of watchers is so powerful. Like that's just one, ancillary use case. There's so many though. That's really awesome.
Yeah, there's a TV show. Again, I've been in London for 14 years, but there's a TV show in the UK, which is exactly that. You just watch people watch sports, and this is on terrestrial television. It's hugely popular. You watch people watch different TV programs and watch their reactions to things. It's fascinating, people watching. And for me, I've spent the past 15 years watching people at parties. That's all I do is, I'm I'm streaming events and I watch the footage all day long. And like it's fascinating where sometimes when you have an artist, sometimes the most interesting things that happen in BeApp TV are the crowd. I mean, there's a whole subcategory of I don't know if you're familiar with Boiler Room, but there's a whole subcategory of Boiler Room memes with just people that are standing behind the DJ that are doing stupid stuff. And watching sometimes the people watching is phenomenal. I mean, that's what makes a festival like Tomorrowland so compelling to watch, is because the crowd is like, wow, this is crazy. So if you can take that and take it outside of the music environment and take it into me and you having this conversation, but there's 20 of us socializing. Maybe we're all having an in-home drink, but we're watching a big artist like Justin Bieber. And then there's 20 people watching us. And then there's 20 people watching them. That is going to be wild.
It's going to be wild.
And then we've gamified that so that, like, in order to be able to get certain levels of access, you have to do certain things. And so very similar to what you'll see in the gaming space with tokens and being able to access certain rooms. But I think we're at the very forefront of what can be done in the world of live streaming. At the moment, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, in some degree us, we're all kind of doing the same thing. It's like you have an artist, you're streaming it. Okay, where does this go? Where are we taking this? Twitch and YouTube aren't going to move. Instagram's not going to move. So they're heritage companies that have been doing what they've been doing for a very long time. It's up to people like me who are nimble and startup-y that have to really innovate and really try new things to see what's going to resonate with the audience.
Totally. I want to shift to this section of the show called the Wellness Corner. So for me, one of the areas I'm super passionate about, music is one of them, but the other is health and wellness. And I really believe that I think of health as a stack, and fitness, nutrition, sleep, meditation, all of these different things layered on top of each other really create a compounding effect. It has for me when I've experimented with different things, and for a lot of people I've talked to. So what I'd love to do in this section is I basically just break down a couple different parts of wellness, and I'd love for you to share, how you think about it. If you prioritize it or not throughout the day, either way is fine. And if you do, kind of what brands or products do you use, routines you have, et cetera.
Great.
So the first one is just morning routine. So do you have a set routine that you use to start the day?
I do. It's pretty extensive. Not to step back, but the level of stress that you carry as an entrepreneur, you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders. And I think the only way to get through that is through fitness, meditation, and diet. I don't think it's even possible to absorb the level of pressure unless you're really taking care of your body. So in the morning, it sounds like such a cliche now that everybody's into health and wellness. I was doing a lot of these things before it was fashionable, but I do 20 minutes of meditation. Sometimes I'll do self-meditation, or I use Headspace, which I think is great. I have this drink that I make every morning. It's hot water, lemon, cayenne, and sometimes if it's cold outside, I put a little bit of ginger in it. And then I drink another 1.5 liters of water with some stuff I have from, he's a wellness longevity expert called Dr. Stephen Gundry. So he's all about your gut biome and how what happens in your stomach really impacts all of the things that operate in your body. So he has these powders that I drink every morning, and then I run 10K every day. I come back, I'll have a bulletproof. So I don't use the ghee butter, but I use the MCT oil. And then I sometimes, I'm also vegan, so I don't have any animal products. So sometimes it's hard for me to get the collagen that I need just to make sure that my body doesn't break, because I run a lot. So I sometimes use either plant-based collagen or plant-based protein to put into my coffee. And then I start the day every day.
That's a great routine. A lot of those pieces I've heard, but never heard someone put it together like that. The drink is really interesting. I do the water with lemon, but I really should start trying the warm water, lemon and cayenne. What's the science behind that, or do you just feel good after you do it?
The warm water just absorbs in your body much quicker. If it's at room temperature, sometimes your body has to break down cold water to get it into your system. Cayenne pepper is great for loosening up mucus. Sounds a bit gross, but mucus in different parts of your joints. And so like getting cayenne pepper and lemon water into your system, it kind of just loosens up your joints. Ginger is just, it's fantastic. It's a great anti-inflammatory. So if you need to run or if you need to be loose, Ginger is amazing. And then also from just keeping your immune system up, there's nothing that works better. I got really sick in 2008. Like my dad had cancer, and like the business wasn't going well, and I fully broke down. And then I started really paying extra care to my diet and to my fitness levels. I haven't had a cold, not a sniffle, no COVID since 2008. Nothing, zero. I truly believe that if you can keep your body in an alkaline state, so I don't know how many people are when you even hear about this kind of stuff, but your body has different levels of pH, and if you can keep your body in an alkaline state, I don't think germs and viruses can really penetrate your immune system, because you're vibrating at a very, very high frequency.
And what are the best tips for people to get to that alkaline state? So like, are there certain foods or the morning routine you said is obviously a great way to start, but are there certain foods to avoid or try to over index on to get to that state?
Yeah. So lemons are probably one of the best alkalining things that you could have. And there's a number of different guides that you can see where foods lie on the alkaline index. Meat is terrible. I stopped eating meat probably about 9 years ago. So that's all meat: red meat, chicken, turkey. Vegetables are very alkalining. So I also, again, anybody listening to this is going to think I'm insane. But I also intermittent fast. So I don't have my first meal until around 4:30. And putting your body in that fasted state really just hypercharges you. People think you'll be a little bit tired. It's the exact opposite. It's you really start firing on all cylinders. So I would say if you can keep it feels like veganism is a big buzzword, but if you can keep your diet mostly plant-based with a lot of leafy greens, you'd be amazed at the difference in your energy levels. Now, sometimes I do need that extra kick, so every now and again I'll have 2 or 3 eggs, which help give. I think egg whites are a very good source of protein that help you give some extra energy if you feel like you're not satiated from pure plants. But at the moment I'm on. I guess you asked about products. I can't speak high enough about this company called Sakara. So Sakara is a food delivery service. They send you all of your meals. And I've tried a lot of these different types of meal kits, but they send you your meals. You throw it in a pan for 5 minutes, and then you eat. And it's the cleanest, most delicious, nutritious food that you could possibly imagine.
Couldn't be easier than that.
It's easy peasy. So the problem is, because I'm fasting all day, I'm starving. So by the time I get to my meal, I eat like 3 Sakara meals in like a 3-hour window.
Yeah, I intermittent fast as well, and I usually go about till 2 p.m. And it's honestly gotten to the point where like the mental clarity you get when you're fasted is unbelievable. People who don't fast just don't understand. Like they think you're just making it up because you want them to try it. I've gotten to the point where like I used to look forward to eating, and now I hate when the mealtime comes, because I get like, I take a step down and get super sluggish. And I mean, you have to eat at some point, but that's how I feel about fasting.
Yeah, I read a lot of, I guess in free time, I read a lot about like how do you live the longest, most fulfilled life. And there are 2 things that I'd say every long-term longevity experts say. One is community. So you need a lot of friends around you that helps you live a long life. The second thing, which is probably even more important, eat less. Eat less. And it's, no matter how organic something is, it's all a little bit tainted. And when you're born, you're pretty pure. Most of the things that get inside your body we're consuming, whether you breathe in the air or it's in your food. And so in order to minimize the amount of bad products that are going into you, minimize the stuff that you're putting in. I mean, even if you have stuff that's AAA organic, it's still going to have something on it, or pesticides. And so again, I normally don't talk about this stuff. A lot of people think I'm crazy. So I keep my mouth shut, and nobody wants to be preached to about diet. But in my, at least in my own little bubble, I went from being one of the most stressed out people that I could imagine, where I couldn't sleep. I had anxiety all the time, like always freaking out, which makes you bad in business, to just having a very blissful approach, and trying to really just, be healthy. And it gives you also a sense of confidence. It's like if you're super healthy, nothing is going to get thrown at you that's going to rattle you. If you're hungover and you slept in and you're feeling a little bit groggy and you're feeling sluggish because you had some bacon and eggs in the morning, yeah, when stressful moments come, your anxiety spikes. And that's not necessarily even anxiety. It's like your blood sugar is just going all over the place. So if you can maintain discipline in your diet, I first started doing it because I just wanted to be better at business. And in the startup world, it's like football. We're in a game of inches. It's like every single inch matters. And if focusing on your diet and your sleep regime and your exercise patterns makes you better at working at your company and makes you a better entrepreneur, then why not take the edge?
Exactly.
Why not? Because it's 20 minutes worth of enjoyment over a big, fat, greasy meal for 23 hours and 40 minutes worth of pain. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's so true. We covered a lot of the sub-segments in there. The last one that I wanted to hit, and then we've got 2 more questions and I'll let you get out of here, is the content diet. So from like on the micro side, like newsletters and podcasts that you consume more like daily or weekly, and then all the way to kind of more long-term books, what would you recommend and what are things that you consume?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is get off all social media, except for BeApp. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. So from a content perspective, I used to wake up and check the social media platforms, and it just made me sad. Every time I looked at these things, I just didn't feel good about myself, didn't feel good about the world. So I just stopped doing that altogether. I don't even have it on my phone. You do feel a little bit disconnected from the world, but it's funny, this idea of FOMO and the fear of missing out. It's like that's kind of what BeApp was. It was like, to not have FOMO. You're never missing out on everything. We're giving you direct access. And so like I found that eliminating social from your content plan will make leaps and bounds on your just overall happiness levels. I start my day again on the Headspace app. I watch this thing that Andy, who's the founder of Headspace, he has this thing called the Morning Wake Up, just like a 4-minute, just cute thing that it just gives you some life advice on impermanence and how everything's changing. And if it's bad, don't worry, it's going to be good. And if it's good, don't get too excited because it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And those little reminders of just like how you can stay even and be the rock in a storm always sets me up well for the day. In my free time, as far as the stuff that I consume, I'm still a music junkie. I mean, I listen to everything. And one of the benefits of being in my job is everybody always sends me stuff. So I get to listen to a lot of things. It's a bad habit. Like instead of, when you're a little bit anxious and most people go to Instagram to kind of, distract themselves from whatever they're doing. My bad habit is sometimes I read the New York Times too much. I still, with all the social injustices that are happening in the world, and especially me living in New York, I don't know if you could hear it, but there was a protest just outside as we were talking. I was wondering if that would bleed through. I do feel an obligation to kind of stay, I don't know if it's informed, because a lot of people have polarized views of what news is right and what news is wrong. I guess because I live in New York, the New York Times is a very good, at least informative newspaper. At least, I kind of know what's happening in the city that I live in, and it kind of is my access point to the world. I don't watch the news at all. I used to watch CNN and Fox and all of these other things to see what was happening. And again, it just made me feel bad, made me feel angry, and it just didn't give me that sense of me being at my best. So I just cut all that out. From a book's perspective, a lot of the stuff I read is based on wellness and health. So I'm just walking over to my bookshelf. The last 2 books that I read, one is called Lifespan by Dr. David A. Sinclair, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. And then the other one is called Superhuman by Dave Asprey. He's the guy that founded the Bulletproof Diet. So it sounds horrible, but a lot of my life is revolved around making sure that I'm in optimal physical shape and mental shape so that I can be better at my job. And it's one of those things where if you truly care about building something, it's an all-encompassing thing.
Yeah. These last 2 questions we asked to every guest, so I'm really pumped to get your take on these. In the first one, a lot of what you said, a lot of your answer for this one is probably littered in all of your other answers, but this is kind of a tradition on the show, is the Startup Manifesto. So if you had to write a Startup Manifesto with 5 of the most important key lessons or pitfalls to avoid when starting out, what would they be?
I'd say the most important thing is don't run out of money. Really, really don't run out of. There's a thing that everyone calls it Droom. Don't run out of money ever. So the Droom mentality. The second thing is if you truly believe in what you're doing, never quit. There's a great book by Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz called The Hard Thing About the Hard Things. And he has just one of the best lines. He says, when you're in the tech startup world, there's two states of mind. It's either pure bliss or pure hell. And if you're not comfortable living in those two states, then don't do this job. And I thought that really captured the essence of what it's like, because the highs are so high and the lows are so low. And so if you don't like those swings, or if you can't handle those swings, then I don't know if being in the startup game is for you. I think that the biggest thing is just never give up. And it sounds like such a cliche, but there's probably 3 times where I almost walked out. I just said, I can't handle this anymore. It's just, there's no light at the end of the day. And, that one of the great things about meditation, it just teaches you that everything's always changing. There's such if things are good, it's not always going to stay good. And if things are bad, it's not always going to stay bad. And especially as an entrepreneur, sometimes things get really bad. And you just have to have confidence if you really believe in what you're doing, that it's not always going to stay bad. And sometimes you can, I call it muscle your way out, but sometimes just massive action your way out. Sometimes just doing stuff, like just being active, like pick up the phone, email somebody, go for the coffee, and just sometimes that just kind of gets you out of the bad place that happens to every entrepreneur. Another thing is realize that you're not alone. For one of the things that I think podcasts like this teaches people, and I hope that I'm being as honest as possible as about how volatile this world is a lot of times people paint a very rosy picture about what it's like to run your own company. And I think hearing the trials and tribulations of other founders, of knowing that, it's not all just, black cars and private parties, and it's sometimes it's hard. And knowing that everybody, and again, I'm a small company, but at every single level, they all go through kind of the same headaches, and knowing that you're not alone in these kind of trials, that it's like, this is what it takes. If you want to be in this game, this is what it takes. And so I don't know if that's 4, if that's 5. I guess my 5th thing would, I know even if you need capital, sometimes, be very careful about who you take money from, because sometimes you can take money from the wrong people. And that could really hamper your business if they take you off track.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great list. And definitely those things ring true with some of the other founders I've talked to as well. The second question we asked everybody is the nomination. So this has been an incredible way for the show to grow and get introduced to some really amazing founders. So it's your turn to nominate another founder that's either a friend, colleague, or mentor of yours that you would like to see on the show in the future.
Yeah, I know a lot. It's funny. My network is all entrepreneurs. Everybody I know and hang out with, they're all kind of started their own companies. But I think someone who I would love for you to interview is one of my best friends. His name's Scott Heckman. I'm actually godfather to his son, so it's a little bit loaded. But he has an amazing business. I'll give a little bit of backstory. Scott's brother was my roommate at USC, and because I didn't come from much, it was my first exposure to like a real entrepreneur. So Scott's dad is a guy named Dick Heckman, and he founded a company called US Filter. He aggregated and bought up all the water rights in the U.S., ended up selling the company to Vivendi for $6.4 billion. And I witnessed that firsthand. Again, me being a kid from lower class Philadelphia, having that as my roommate's dad, it was a real inspiration. And the reason I'm bringing it up here is because Dick is really sick. He's really sick. Like, he's in the hospice now. And, so much of what he's done for me and my group of friends of like just teaching us of, how to be in business and how to be aggressive and how not to take any shit from anybody and not to take no for an answer. It was a real inspiration to see that from the sidelines. But his son, Scott, has built a company. It's called Laseraway. I don't know if you've heard of it, but he started out doing laser tattoo removal, and then he's moved into laser hair removal. Now he does Juvederm and Botox. At the moment, he's got over 60 stores. I think he's doing close to $200 million in top line revenue a year from a company he founded around the same time that I started BeApp TV. So he is a true entrepreneur. He started this company, bootstrapped it from the beginning all the way up to, a company that's, pretty much, I think he's the largest, it sounds a bit weird, but I think he's the largest seller of Botox in the US, as far as just the amount of Botox that moves to his clinic. So it's a little bit different, but his story of, opening up one retail space to opening up, now he is 60. I think that'd be an interesting, quite different conversation than you and I are having from people in the tech space.
Yeah, no, I would love to talk to him. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for the nomination. Before we let you go, I just want to acknowledge you for a second. I'm hosting, but I'm also like a fan and consumer and just listening to the conversation and learning. And I think, it sounds a little woo-woo, but I believe in the kind of vibration. I feel like me and you are kind of on similar vibrations. And as I listen to your story, what's really inspiring to me is how ahead of the curve and like strong in your convictions that you were a lot of the time throughout your career. You were ahead of the curve in streaming, relatively ahead of the curve in electronic dance, ahead of the curve, I would say, in like wellness, health, and longevity. You've been doing that stuff for a long time. It's just really impressive that, whenever you're someone that's ahead of the curve on that graph, it can often be frustrating to try to, fight those battles when no one's there. I think that's super inspiring. So I just want to say, if people listen to this and hopefully they take away a lot, but if they take away nothing else, that aspect of what you've brought to your career and life is super impressive. And I'll continue to be a huge fan and really want to thank you for coming on.
Oh man, thank you so much. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. So, I've done a lot of press, but never a podcast. And it's helpful for entrepreneurs. It's helpful for me to actually tell the story, because sometimes, even though I haven't thought about a lot of things that we discussed today in years. And so this has actually meant a lot to me, just because it's really taken me down memory lane over what's happened over the course of my career to how we got here. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for inviting me on.
Of course. Yeah. Ray Smith, founder of BeApp and BeApp TV. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kallaway.
Thank you for listening to that episode with Ray Smith of BeApp. If you're loving the show and want to support, there's a couple quick, completely free things you could do that would really help us out. 1, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts. If you go on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and a couple sentence positive review on why the show inspired you. These ratings and reviews are super important, and they signal to Apple that they should put our show in front of other people that might like it. 2, follow us on Instagram and Twitter @FounderPodcast. Each week we put out teasers, audio clips, and important quotes from the episode. And lastly, check out our website as a mission control for the show. Go to thefounderpod.com. We have a page on there called Special Offers, where we link up all the discount codes from our founders' companies, as well as the books and resources they recommend. I hope you enjoyed that episode and are looking forward to the next one. Until then, I'm Kallaway, and this is The Founder.